following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. And this episode, my allergies are driving me crazy. So I apologize if I sound winded or cough or do something else like that. Yeah, this episode, we're talking about core values-driven decision-making. In other words, living your life based on what's really important to you. You know my top 10 phrase, core values are more important to relationships than common interests. We're going to focus on that personally and in business this week. My guest this week is Marianna Lead, co-author of Me, My Brand, and Why, and I'm really excited to talk to her because core values are this thing that people and companies and governments drop all the time, but so many people don't know what their core values are. Self-awareness is a lifelong pursuit, but so many of us are too afraid of what we're going to find if we really look at who we are. So we go through life on kind of this autopilot, constantly feeling like we can't really trust our friends, that no one really cares about us, and we don't know what to do about it. In order to meet like-minded people, we need to know our own minds, and that means accepting what hurts us and makes us feel like we matter, our passions, our fears, all of it. Instead, many of us self-gaslight to fit in, and it leaves us feeling like we're always too much and never enough at the same time. Think about the common insults that get thrown at people. He's a narcissist. She just wants attention. You're so selfish. They're only in it for themselves. In the middle of these chestnuts of invalidating dismissal are cores of something real. Narcissists definitely exist, and they're scary. They're just much rarer than the accusations would lead you to believe. Someone who needs too much attention from other people could be struggling to self-validate. Some truly selfish people exist. That comment's just overused. Well, yeah, some people are just out to use you, but is giving to get or getting then giving really so bad? The question is, with all these things, are you letting people do some of these things too easily because your self-esteem is low? Do you need that external validation because your self-esteem is low? Do you need to act like you have zero flaws because your self-esteem is low? We don't get what we deserve in life. We get what we tolerate. And a lot of us tolerate a lot of stuff that isn't good for us. And sometimes that's because we don't know what is good for us, because we don't know what's really important to us. So we seek out a sense of how we're doing in life and career based on the opinions of other people who then use phrases like, you're so selfish and you just want attention, to get us to do what they want, not what leads us to feeling happy and fulfilled. Questions, comments, just want to say hi, Liana at nottherapyshow.com, or just go to nottherapyshow.com. That's our website. Join our mailing list while you're there. Fill out the contact form. Or socials, Not Therapy Show on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. Let's talk about that selfishness thing. Let's talk about wanting attention. It's not healthy to never consider yourself, never put yourself first, and to never want attention. Trust me, I tried. I ended up in trauma therapy. And in trauma therapy, one of the things I learned is that you need a firm understanding of yourself to be able to set boundaries. We can't be all things to all people all the time. Top 10 phrase, self-esteem cannot exist without self-compassion. Your sense of self has to be something other than that thing that you have to squash so that other people won't call you selfish. A healthy self-concept means recognizing that virtuous things like being kind are choices, not necessities. Now, this idea that being kind is a choice, not a necessity, this may sound nuts to you. Who wouldn't be kind? Well, a lot of people end up being pretty cruel precisely because they think kindness is essential. Hear me out here. The thinking goes, if you're not kind all the time, then you're a bad person. People who think this way tend to engage in a ton of doublethink to convince themselves that they're being nice when they're really just being cruel and manipulative. Stuff like, oh, I won't tell my friend that guy she has a crush on likes her. He'll just hurt her because you're jealous. Oh, I'll just keep this money from him. He won't know how to spend it properly anyway. I'll take care of it for him because you want to spend the money. Right. Many people's lives are made up of lies that they tell themselves to avoid realizing that they're going against their stated values and therefore lack integrity. Because as rewarding as integrity is, it's hard until you start practicing. You know, if you admit to yourself that you didn't do something outwardly nice because you just didn't want to, you can challenge whether or not that moment of roughness or selfishness was rational. You know, did it get you where you needed or wanted to go? Or did it only feel good at the time and come back to bite you later? Did you feel worse afterwards? Because in your gut, in your heart of hearts, you know it wasn't nice, it wasn't kind, it wasn't helping them, it was going against your values. When you need to make excuses, maybe don't repeat the behavior. Now, you deserve self-preservation. Everybody deserves self-preservation, but not to the point where you sacrifice your core values, because if you're sacrificing your core values, what exactly are you preserving? At the point you sacrifice your own values, it tends to be a choice made out of panic, desperation, fear, rage, or hate. And those choices, and they are choices, are probably going to hurt more than they help in the long run. This is the thing that people who were abused for a prolonged period of time really struggle with, the stuff they did just to maintain the relationship with the abuser, because, you know, abuse turns us against ourselves. One of the hardest things for me to accept in trauma therapy, up there with your friends are not helping you and you need to cut off anybody who isn't on board with your recovery. Yeah. One of the hardest things for me to accept in trauma therapy was that if I was going to survive, I had to give up on being nice and kind to everyone, because being nice and kind to everyone meant not only was I putting myself last, but I was also becoming a liability to the nicer people around me. If I was always giving into the manipulators and bullies in my life, if I was actively nice to people who weren't nice people, there was zero reason for people to treat me well. In fact, there was an active benefit to treating me poorly, because those people got more of my attention as I tried to compensate for their poor behavior with better behavior of my own. Killing people with kindness doesn't always work. Again, in life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you tolerate. Integrity has become my number one core value because I had to face the fact that, well, as the people that weren't great for me were fond of telling me, that none of this stuff I'm about to say is stuff that came from me. This is what I've heard from the world, right? People just don't like me. That's not a strength I have. I'm not good at getting people to like me. I'm useful. I'm smart. I'm considerate and caring, but I'm not likable. Charisma is my dump stat. I get blamed for stuff that happens when I'm not even there, and not just there that day. People blame me for stuff when I haven't seen them in a decade, right? It's like anti-Riz. I'm not one of those people just fall in love with, right? I have members of my family that are like that. People just fall for them. They think they're amazing and want to do things for them, right? I'm not beautiful that way. I'm not sexy. I'm not cute. I'm profoundly forgettable when I'm not actively annoying someone. Yes, all the people who told me this stuff for my own good, I hear you. I accept what you're saying. But you will meet few people with more integrity than me. And in the long run, that's the kind of person I want in my life. People with integrity. So, you can have your beautiful people. You can have your charming people. Bring me your ugly, your nerdy, your irritating. As long as they're people with integrity, we'll probably get along just fine. The pretty, charming people can keep backstabbing each other on reality TV. Good for them, right? Of course, when I talk this way, guarantee at least one person comes back with, stop fishing for compliments. You just want attention. And it's not true. I'll do a whole episode on the just wants attention thing, but I want to stick to core values right now, because core values are what allows you to know when someone's saying something about you that just isn't true. I did used to feel like I needed to be all these likable, shiny things that I'm very much not, just to survive in the world. But what I've learned is you don't need a narrow handful of trendy specific strengths. As long as you recognize and play to the strengths that you actually have. What I've learned the hard way is that if you keep changing to outrun the negative labels other people put on you, you spend all your time running and you end up depleted. But if you play to your strengths, your values, then you can work towards things in a regulated way instead of just running away from things in a panic. And I have a guest that coaches people on just how to do that coming up after the break. Marianna Lead, co-author of Me, My Brand, and Why, joins me after this break. Questions, comments, concerns, suggestions for topics for other shows. Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. Join the mailing list over there. Fill out the contact form. And Not Therapy Show on X. That's Twitter, Instagram, and Threads if you want to connect on socials. Be right back talking more core values-driven decision-making on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist, and we're still talking core values-driven decision-making. And it is time for the interview. This interview, I've got Marianna Lead, co-author of Me, My Brand, and Why. Marianna is also a master's certified coach and the owner, Marianna, of Goal Imagery Coaching Academy. You're the owner?
Yes.
Right. And okay, so Marianna, your book, Me, My Brand, and Why, is all about connecting to who you really are so you can find fulfillment, happiness, and like-minded people. How do people get started figuring out what they really believe in?
It's such a great question, Liana. And, what started me on this path is another book that I read by Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
Mm-hmm.
And I started figuring out what my why is and realized it's not so easy to figure out. And my clients and the clients of my co-author as well had the same issue. It seemed like it should be easy. Like, why am I here? What is my calling? What are my values? What are my strengths? Should be kind of evident, but it's by far not so evident. And I think that it takes a lot of introspection and self-knowledge and self-learning. You would think, like, what is there to learn? You are you, right?
Right.
But we don't know a lot of things about ourselves that we think that we should know. And I think that with the coach, it's the space is opened up to create this knowledge, to explore who am I really? What am I doing on this planet? What is my purpose? What is my vision? What is my mission? And all of that is determined by your values. What are my values? What I really value? What is important? What do I deem as really important in life? What are my beliefs that I stand by? What are my strengths that make it natural for me to do certain things that are seem to be easy for me to do because these are my strengths.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
And
so,
we take those for value, right? We take those for granted, our strength. We tend to focus on improving our weaknesses, but not recognizing our strengths to help provide a structure for improving our weaknesses. And that can cause a lot of people to run around in circles, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And this is not just I've seen this not just personally. I've seen this in business consulting a lot. There's this phenomenon in big corporations where decisions come down to the last person who talked to somebody. And it wastes companies so much money. I've seen companies burn tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars doing the mission statements and the core values documents. And then they actually get down to transferring that to real productivity. And they just spin their wheels because they can't choose between sort of yes versus yes or good versus good decisions. So, well, for instance, kindness and consideration is a great value, but also integrity and you know, goal achieving goals. And sometimes you have to be a little bit unkind to get the job done. And if people don't have those core values really, really firm, things get really bogged down in indecision. That's what I found. Have you found similar?
Yes, you're making great points because it does take certain balance. And unfortunately, most companies, they do create all of these statements and they hire consultants and coaches to create those statements. And but they just kind of forget about them. They
Mm-hmm.
hang it up on the wall. And if they're not implemented, they're meaningless. Right? So the questions are, how do you actually implement those statements into the behavior and into behavior of every employee, and maybe how do you find those employees in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
How do you actually do the interviewing process so that you attract the right people to work for you that share the same beliefs and ideas? But before someone else can share the organizational beliefs and ideas, the leadership must believe them first.
Right.
And so if they're just like kind of making it sound pretty, integrity sounds pretty, right? Kindness sounds pretty. It's kind of politically correct words, but do they live them? Do they really
Right.
believe them? What is their behavior day to day? And if they don't do what they preach, right? If they don't put their mouth where their money is, well, then it's kind of useless.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that going around. So, how can somebody spot managers, leaders, potential employers who aren't practicing what they preach?
I think it becomes really evident because
Mm-hmm.
if someone is really kind, because you made that example, or
Mm-hmm.
someone is really in integrity, you're going to see that from top down and from down up, right? You're going to see throughout the whole organization that the decisions are made fairly,
Mm-hmm.
that people feel safe to express their own opinions, that there is a certain level of trust and camaraderie amongst team members and employees in general. You will see that departments communicate between each other, and and everything is transparent because that's the idea of integrity. But if you
Mm-hmm.
see opposite behaviors, well, that'll tell you something too.
Yeah, and this, I think a lot of people are rolling their eyes right now, going, I've never seen a company do that. They are out there, but I found they seem to move much slower because they actually take the time to check in, see how employees are doing. It doesn't put products immediately out the door, but it does make the company work smart, not hard. It becomes more efficient, so everybody doesn't seem so burned out, overworked, miserable, all that stuff. Where do you start with someone who comes to you for coaching and they mean well, but they're not there? Where do you begin to improve? I mean, this is all about integrity, right? Acting in accordance with your stated values.
Well, yes. I mean, it's a deep question because, someone who asks us to help them with that should mean it, right? If they don't
Right.
mean, right? So, and as I said before, it happens all the time. The companies and individuals will hire you, but they're not going to implement and translate these words into actual behaviors. And that's, and that's just going to be wasted time and money for them and for the coach, because we as coaches, we of course we want to see good results. We want to see positive ascendance of consciousness. We want to see that evolvement. And but someone who does mean it, we start with I mean, I wrote the book because it's a complicated process,
Mm-hmm.
actually. So I wrote the book, Me, My Brand, and Why. And in this book, we literally go step by step and we describe lots of different exercises that are practical in their nature to help you identify who you are. I know it sounds ridiculous, but we don't know truly who we are,
It's true. A lot of people do not know who they are.
right?
Yeah.
So, and who we are includes values, includes strengths, and includes what excites you, what motivates you. Because it's something, some values are kind of sleeping values. I call them sleeping values
Mm-hmm.
because they don't necessarily make you want to jump out of bed and do things. So they're important values that define how you're going to go about certain things. Like you mentioned kindness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But unless I'm in the business of doing kindness on a daily basis, then kindness is just going to be a sleeping value because I'm just kind person no matter what. But I'm not necessarily going to wake up thinking, what is a kind thing I'm going to actually do today, right? So that's not going to be my incentive for living. And we are, as coaches, we're really trying to identify to help people identify for the purpose of creating their personal brand, the idea of what values that they operate through and with that motivate them to get up in the morning and get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, like I said, kindness could be a motivational value if you're getting up with an idea of, I want to do something that will be kind,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the same value could be either a sleeping value or a value that actually moves you forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And that's important when things get rough. I think a lot of people, they're like, what gets me up in the morning is I need money to live. All right, great. But that's not enough in the long term, right? Those people don't tend to be very happy because it's very hard to make choices when you don't have values driven priorities. I find people end up working very hard, getting very, very tired, and having very little to show for it because they're just going around in a circle. So, how do you identify that value that's going to get someone up in the morning?
yeah, so there are exercises that we implement to help them understand what drives them, what gets them excited.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking about finding a job, we are finding that some people have on their resume things that they do well, but they
Yep.
don't enjoy, something that doesn't drive them. So my suggestion is to clients like that to look at their resumes and maybe make sure that the only things that they highlight are things that they actually like doing. Because if they think that that's going to create um, it make it easier to get a job,
Mm-hmm.
maybe so, but they're going to end up doing things that they don't want to be doing and something that they're trying to get away from. But it just takes that self-knowledge and be honest with yourself to say, what are my values? What are my strengths? What I actually like doing? What drives me? And so what doesn't drive you, what's not really exciting for you, well, maybe position yourself differently and then you're going to get a different result.
Yeah, that takes a certain amount of confidence that a lot of people, they panic, jump for the first job, and then they wonder why they're never satisfied in work. I found one of the things that values-driven decision making gives me is the confidence to say no to something that may seem like an opportunity or somebody's telling me very forcefully is an opportunity, but it's actually just an opportunity for misery. It's not something I like. It's not something I'm interested in. Sure, it could make some money down the road, but it's a huge amount of time that I could be spending on other things. And that, I mean, that saying no is very, very hard when you don't feel empowerment's such an overused word, but it is a thing, right? Waiting for the right opportunity. That's a huge part of what coaching helps you do, correct?
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. If you like, I can share like one exercise from the book that helps people to identify what drives them.
That'd be great. But this is a golden opportunity to tease over a commercial, Marianna. Hang on. We'll get to that tip after the break, so you're going to want to hang on. We're talking to Marianna Lead, co author of Me, My Brand, and Why. We're going to get to how to identify your core values, what's important to you in life, after the break on Instant Therapy. Questions, comments, concerns, Liana at Not Therapy Show at nottherapyshow.com is the website. After this, stay tuned. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. I'm still talking to Marianna Lead, certified master coach and co-author of Me, My Brand, and Why. And we're talking about core values-driven decision making. And before the break, Marianna said she'd share an excerpt, an exercise from her book about how to start identifying what's really important to you, what really makes you happy. And so, of course, I paused for a commercial. But Marianna, you have the floor now. Give us this exercise.
Yeah. So I'm actually looking through my book myself right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of the very first exercises that I came up with is based on my background in theater. Right. And so the first thing that I recommend doing is to write a very short story in first person of a time that you found yourself really happy when you were in the zone or experience a sense of inner fulfillment. Just like 2, 3 paragraphs describing what it is that you see, what it is that you hear. Just kind of think of something that was really good, something that you were proud of and felt really good. And just put it away for a couple of days, just so that you kind of separate yourself from what you wrote, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then ask yourself these questions about the main character, right? The hero of your story. Clearly,
Mm-hmm.
it's you, but you want to look at that character as if it's just someone else, a
Fresh
character,
eyes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? From
Yeah.
outside in, and ask, what is this main character striving for? What makes him or her happy? What does the main character believe in and hope to achieve? And just write down all of these answers. And then look at your answers and edit them down to short, succinct phrases,
Mm-hmm.
because those answers are going to be indications of what your, well, we call them in the book fuels, what drives you, what
Right.
fuels you, what your fuels are, right? And then
Right.
again, put it away, put your story and your answers away for a few days so you can review everything with fresh eyes to make further adjustments. And then make your list of fuels by using, well, we have fuel tables, which is a bunch of words, descriptive words put together, where you can kind of just makes it easier for you to identify your fuel, what excites you. But
Mm-hmm.
you don't really need, you don't have to have the table. But if you do want to have a table that we offer, well, then, the book is available on Amazon.com. But this is a simple exercise that you can do on your own. Just by writing a short story about yourself where you felt really good, and then asking yourself very simple questions as if you're looking at that main character as if it's someone else. Because, our human nature is that we're always able to give such great advice to other people, right? But not to ourselves. So I think that the idea of being able to identify something when we felt excited, when we felt energized, and then looking at it from outside in is extremely helpful.
Now, we live in this age where some self-help, very successful self-help movements insist that happiness is not the goal, that the goal is duty or hard work or something like that. And people seem to distrust the idea that happiness is real. But in terms of brain science, that's there for a reason. So, have you ever encountered somebody who comes from this school of thought, and how do you get them to pivot to something, because like you said, if you don't have anything making you happy, you don't have fuel, you gradually ran out of energy. So how do you pivot some of these more tough love clients?
Well, I mean, again, so we work with a client in partnership, right? So I can offer my perspective. I have no attachment to how someone else is thinking, their ideology, their beliefs, and we work with clients in partnership to decide what's best for them. So if this is their motto of how they live by, well, that's their choice, right?
Right.
This is how they want to live their lives. I think that personally, I think that it's really important to understand that happiness, there is no such thing as happiness. It's like there's the state of happiness is a state of movement. You feel happy when you are doing something towards a purpose, a specific purpose. Because when we arrive to a certain plateau, it's never quite enough, right? We always
Right.
we have to build something because this is the human nature. I think that by nature we are creative. We are creative and we need to keep on creating, whatever it may be. And so the process of creation towards something that's meaningful is happiness.
Yeah, they're especially among younger, and by younger, I mean sort of under 35. I have these conversations with people and they're like, I want to be rich. And I, if I'm not rich by 30, I'm a failure. It's like, what do you plan to do for the rest of your life? And there's always this pause that they say, enjoy it. But you're absolutely right that life doesn't work that way. If you're not striving, if you're not setting goal, achieve goal, set new goal, it's the working towards the goal that tends to be, if you're doing it, in a way that is, ideal, that's the place that you're happiest. The actual finish line, I'm usually more tired than anything when I get there, you know,
Mhm.
but that feeling of working with people who do have common values, solving problems, getting results, actually seeing the movement happen on the project, that's what feels fulfilling. The goal, the eventual success is almost just a nice to have, because if you're only motivated when you're succeeding, you're not going to get much done. So, are there any exercises you can give somebody who's feeling kind of defeated and not sure how to get back up from being knocked down?
Well, I think that the most important thing is to be able to look within and find the strength. And knowing your strength is really important. So, first, I would recommend identifying your strengths, like really being clear what your strengths are, and then looking at your challenges, including the one you described from the perspective of your strength.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, if my strength is leadership, then I'm going to ask myself, well, from the perspective of leadership, what do I see that I may not notice right now? And
Mm-hmm.
what are the way to move forward? If my strength is kindness, something else that you brought up, that can also be a really helpful strength to move me forward, right? So if I look at it from the perspective of kindness, what do I see? What are the
Mm-hmm.
possibilities that are showing up? But as
Mm-hmm.
you were speaking, and what I was saying before about happiness being doing something creative, I'm also thinking of people who may say to me, well, what about my family? I'm just happy being around my family. That's really all I need, just really feeling that love and expressing love and taking care of my loved ones. That's really all. That's my happiness.
Hmm.
And yes, it's true. But even within that, you are looking to always do something for people that you love, whom you love, right? You always, if it's children, then you're thinking about how you're going to take care of them better as they are growing up.
Right.
How are you going to take care, maybe surprise your romantic partner? So it's still always this exciting creative process of doing something towards the goal that you see in front of yourself, whether it's family, relationships, love relationships, or something that's connected to your career, your job, your business, your organization.
Yeah, and I think creating bonds between people is a form of creativity that's been kind of neglected of late. The idea that you have to produce something you can hold in your hands and show people, as opposed to, the real treasure is the friends we've made along the way kind of thing, has become kind of a mocked cliche. But it is true. If you don't have those human connections, the stuff starts to feel quite meaningless, right?
It's so true. And
Mhm.
I'm thinking that, there's this phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you it's who
Yeah.
you know. But I think that both elements are important. It's important to know what you know and bring certain level of expertise and professionalism, but who you know decides on many, many things.
Yeah, including whether you get ripped off or not. I mean, having people around that are just being surrounded by transactional relationships may work in the short term, but in the long term, you can get really caught up in those. How do you coach people to make sure the people around them are getting them where they want to go?
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. How do you make sure? I think that it's a matter of clarity. It's a matter of strategy, and strategy ideally should include the exit strategy,
Right.
right? And should include whatever obstacles that may be perceived. And our brand is Goal Imagery. So we are really keen on imagery exercises that are connected to the goal that you have in mind. So
Hmm.
thinking about any goal, I think that you can imagine yourself there and then kind of look back and think of what obstacles could have come up on the way and what are possible ways to avoid them or to overcome them or something else, right? And I think that relationships could be trusting relationships and trusted
Hmm.
relationships play a huge role in overcoming any obstacle because that's your support system, really.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like thinking about what can go wrong in the early stages of planning, but it's very, very, very useful in terms of it not seeming like the end of the world when you hit a bump. So good advice. Marianna Lead, Master Certified Coach with the International Coach Federation, Founder Executive Director of Goal Imagery Coaching Academy.
Correct. Yes.
All right, and goalimagery.com?
Goalimagery.com.
All right, Marianna, thanks so much for coming on It's Not Therapy.
Thanks, Liana. It was a pleasure.
All right, after the break, more stuff you can do to figure out what your values are, how to make you happy, and what fuels you in life. Back after this, questions, comments, concerns, nottherapyshow.com. Can't even remember my own website. Too many websites. Anyway, back after this on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back and it's not therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We're still talking core values-driven decision-making. And as Marianna Lead said during the interview, figuring out your core values, then applying them is personal and it's tricky. This is something that one-on-one coaching is much better at than, a 1-hour radio show. A lot of us aren't encouraged to figure out the first part, what our strengths are. Knowing our strengths is seen as arrogant. So a lot of us can name our weaknesses easily, but our strengths, it's like when we try to access our strengths, something inside us just shuts down. Now, if this sounds like you, there is hope. Start by naming your weaknesses. No, seriously. Put down your weaknesses and then get a flip side of that weakness that's the positive attribute of it. Now, I was tricksy when I rattled off my faults earlier in this show. So I'm going to demonstrate how the weakness into positives technique works here. Remember that thing I said earlier about people telling me I'm annoying? Well, it's because I don't just tell them what they want to hear, and I won't go along with things I think are discriminatory or wrong, because I believe in being fair over being popular. Fairness. There it is. There's a positive value. I stand up for what I believe in. People find that annoying. I won't just go with the crowd to fit in. People find that annoying. I'm the person who ruins everyone's fun by saying this is not okay when someone's being a bigot or a bully. Oh, I'm so annoying. I set boundaries. That annoys people too. See how that works? Do you let people walk all over you? You might be a kind, gentle spirit. Are you indecisive? You might be considerate of other people to a fault. This perspective taking builds self-compassion, and top 10 phrase, self-esteem cannot exist without self-compassion. Now, similarly, the things we're good at have downsides as well. I value my decisiveness, but I make sure to give a little more space and time to other people's opinions than I naturally would, because, well, the flip side to decisiveness is pig-headedness. We get better when we balance our strengths with awareness of potential blind spots. So, if it helps you to realize there's a downside to every positive quality and identifying your strengths, lean into that. With great power comes great responsibility, right? Another thing you can do is to take some of your favorite media characters and focus on their strengths. Are these things that you aspire to? Well, the things you aspire to points to the values that are important to you. Do you like the moral shades of gray in the character? Okay, great. What things do they do that you think are morally right? Which things do they do that you think are morally wrong? These are values judgments, which gives you a sense of what's important to you. Now, that was difficult enough, but acting in accordance with your values is pretty tough too. And this is where 2 more of my top 10 phrases come in. Be the hero of your own story and not anyone else's. And don't let problems that aren't your fault lead to mistakes that are. Okay, 1 more. We're going to throw in healthy goals are based on things you can control. 1 more, okay? Stop trying to be perfect. Perfect is a lie. Stop trying to be perfect. We're going for good, not perfection. I think that's a lot of the reason why people can't name their strengths, because they'll think of the one time that they fell short on that, and perfect becomes the enemy of the good. Stop trying to be perfect. It's a lie. Back to healthy goals are based on things you can control. You can't control other people, so you can't live your life based on their reactions. And that's a hard thing to change at first, because no one likes people being upset with them. People certainly don't like being screamed at or verbally abused. And if people are doing that to you because you won't compromise your values, reconsider their place in your life. This is a tough thing because obviously when we were growing up, our parents' approval or disapproval is the only way we knew whether we were bad or good. And part of us may not be individuated because some parents are a little not great at letting their adult children make their own choices. And those first few disappointing your parents or angering them moments, those are really tough, especially if the parent is abusive or an addict. This bundles into the be the hero of your own story and not anyone else's top 10 phrase. A lot of us spend a lot of time trying to save someone that doesn't want to be saved. A sibling we keep bailing out of trouble. A parent we keep making excuses for. That friend who's constantly getting into trouble. A longtime business partner that's more and more lost their way. These are people who aren't acting like the main character in their own story. They blame everyone else for the things they do. They're relying on people to save them and do things for them, which, is an enviable lack of responsibility in the short term, right? We'd all love it for something to not be our fault. But if nothing's our fault, then we can't take credit for anything either. And these types of people I mentioned who aren't the heroes of their own story, they often end up feeling like they haven't earned anything. What we were talking about with Marianna, with the striving, the goal achieving, right? If people are doing everything for you, you don't feel like you earned it. These are the people who actually do crave constant external validation, and constant external validation, that's not healthy. A healthy social group is like the Justice League. Everyone is a hero with their own powers. We help each other. We don't save each other. When you're expecting to save someone, when you're expected to save someone, nothing's their fault, everything's yours. You're making their problems into your mistakes. In healthy relationships, all parties own their ish. Yeah, you have to help a buddy out of a scrape sometimes, but help, not save, right? Being around people with similar values who all have their own strengths helps you solve problems by appealing to those values instead of everybody just trying to manipulate each other into doing what each other wants. Now, spotting those manipulations is really hard at first because they're everywhere. But if you're not okay with being manipulated, you're violating your own values when you manipulate others instead of just, we both want the same thing here in different ways. How do we go about finding common ground? The more you work on values-driven decision-making, the more you'll attract people who share your values. And the more of those people you have around you, the easier it is to live consistently with what you believe in. It's tough and confusing and scary at first, but keep practicing. Over time, it becomes more second nature and you feel much more balanced, happier, and fulfilled no matter what life throws at you. And what life is throwing at me right now is we're out of time on this show. Liana at Not Therapy Show. NotTherapyShow.com is the website. At Not Therapy Show on social media if you want to reach out to me. Until then, work on your values, work on finding your strengths and finding the hidden strengths in your weaknesses. Remember, your crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you.